This episode contains themes of references involving sexual assault that some viewers may find distressing. Please consider your comfort and well being before continuing.
It's not that everyone needs to go and, take their punch and talk to the world about it. And some people, it's a quiet healing, and there's something that you're doing behind the scenes that no one even sees. To me, it was speaking, and that was part of actually my healing and sharing my story and trying to be the light for someone else. And I knew if I could change just one person's life, it didn't have to be on a stage. It could be a private conversation. It could be a post that I did. It could whatever. So I love that you honored that with every listener that's, who's been through something, and we all have. And if you haven't yet, unfortunately, at some point, life will punch you.
Welcome to Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I'm your host, Dr. Cynthia. With over 30 years in the corporate world, as a single mom, cancer survivor, and often the only woman in the C-suite, I understand the balancing act high-achieving women face. Now an executive coach and international speaker, my mission is to embolden every woman in the C-suite or on the rise to claim her agency and challenge the norms holding her back. Tailored for ambitious professional women, this show features candid conversations with powerful business leaders sharing their real stories of success and failure. If you're ready to look up and step up, you're in the right place. Join us and invest in your future today. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I am your host and your coach, Dr. Cynthia. Today, we have a leader who frames moving from adversity to audacity. She has a mindset that calls talented women to move out of complacency and into expansion. What happens when life becomes difficult and fuel for audacious growth? How intentional expansion can challenge conventional leadership preparation, and why audacity is not reckless bravado, but aligned action grounded in resilience and clarity. Today we have my friend, Erika Rothenberger. She has built a platform rooted in audacious expansion, turning life's punches into platforms for growth and connection. She is the author of Audacious Expansion, which by the time y'all are listening will have just dropped. So you're going to want to grab your copy wherever fine books are sold. She explores punch, pivot, expansion, which we'll get into a little bit, as a framework for transformational growth. She's also the founder of Audacious Women Summit, which was a sold out success and already planning for the next round, and an advocate for women's leadership with grit and purpose and voice of leadership philosophy where resilience, audacity, and community unlock extraordinary impact. So happy to have you on the show, Erika. Welcome.
Oh, I am so excited to be here. I think I just have to press rewind and listen to that every morning and be like, oh my goodness, I have accomplished a couple things here or
Yeah,
there.
that's your walk on, motivation. Exactly.
Exactly.
You've done amazing things, and you are such a role model for women who have done hard things, have been through hard things and done hard things. I always like to start with the origin story. And so to
Mhm.
whatever depth you're comfortable,
Yes.
what was it that led you into this space and into this work and has you so passionate about helping other women?
Yes, I love this question, and thank you so much for honoring me and just letting me be on your platform. I think the world of you. I have a very important story to share, but before I share the story that really became that real pivotal moment, I want to remind ourselves that sometimes it's that pivotal moment that really changes us or allows us to take that leap, but sometimes it's all those little stories or all those little things
Mm.
that have happened before that have been the building blocks to actually build that foundation or that platform to jump off. So, I'll back up uh, just a little bit there is, a firstborn in Aries, like a go getter, like always wanting to get ahead and do things and have that entrepreneurial spirit as a little girl watching my parents both work really hard, but definitely a lot of trials and tribulations as a child growing up, with my family. Unfortunately both of my parents were alcoholics, and they we I dealt with a lot as a child that I never thought I dealt with, until in so many times we try to repress it, we try to push it down, we try to forget about it, and then something pivotal happens in our life, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, all of those little things that had happened, I kind of just wanted to go away. And we kind of brushed those crumbs under the rug. And eventually they're going to be there to vacuum.
Yes.
So I'll fast forward in my life, and it was June 16th of 2022. It was, a day that like any other, Cynthia. Like, I was getting ready, going to work. I had that bright pink blazer on, those matching pink heels. I was like, I am living the life, right? I'm living this big, bold, audacious life. Husband was in Kansas City on this, great work trip. Kids were with the sitter. They were 6 and 9 at the time, now 9 and 12. And I will tell you, I drove to work the same way that I always did. I stopped and had a networking meeting, and that was supposed to end approximately at like 9:45, but we were in such a great discussion. I pushed it off by 15 minutes and then told my executive VP that I was going to have to push off a meeting from 10 to 10:15. I remember calling my admin, and she pushed it off. And I'll never forget being at that stoplight and leaving my kids a message telling them to have the most fabulous day. And what I didn't know is what was going to happen in just moments after that. As I drove into that parking lot, I took that last sip of pink Himalayan sea salt water. And I will tell you, I thought that pink Himalayan sea salt water was something I had seen on Instagram that was going to give me this glowy complexion. I still don't know if it's working, but like I think Beyonce told you to start drinking it. And as I took that last sip, did what most of us do, gather all of our belongings in our front seat, the many bags and everything. Took a deep breath as I was getting ready to, walk into that suburban office building where I'd worked for 10 years. As a civil engineer, my hard hat, my steel toe boots, living what I thought, again, that big, bold, audacious life. And as I opened the car door, there he was. You see, he was a man I had never seen before. And I quickly asked him, "Sir, can I help you?" And as the last word came out of my mouth, he punched me so hard in the face. He grabbed me by the hair and he threw me to the asphalt pavement. He proceeded to punch me 5, 6, 7 more times. But at that point, I wasn't even counting. I felt more like a rag doll than even like a human. Not knowing what just happened to me, I was kicking, I was screaming, I was biting as blood, saliva, and tears quickly started dripping down my face. And what I didn't know is in that next moment, he took the large crease of his elbow and put it under my throat. And
Oh my
was a
gosh.
matter of seconds really felt like minutes, knowing that that may have been my last breath on earth, knowing that maybe in the last moment that I was going to be the mom to Drew and Adeline, the wife to Andy, to walk into that office building and be that woman in construction who was trying to pave the path for so many other women. And as he squeezed as tight as he could, everything went black.
Oh my god.
And I will tell you, it was by the act of someone way higher than me that I was able to come to consciousness, not knowing where I was, what was going on, the confusion in my head, the tightness in my throat, fear that just inflicted, and the adrenaline just rushing through every part of my bones and, who I was. And as I looked up to that bright sky, I knew that I had to get up. I had to do everything I could to run for help, not knowing if he would chase me with a gun, if he was going to come after me. And as I turned over my shoulder, I saw him in my car getting ready to try to take it.
Oh,
And I ran as hard as I could. Went into that building. I screamed as loud as I could. And the next 72 hours were an utter blur. He fled by foot. He started burying himself in the marshes and the grasses locally, where the dogs and drones came in and actually had found him. I ran into that office building, and next thing I know, there were police, there were detectives. I was rushed off to trauma. And what I didn't know the whole time is that this man had actually been in prison for 12 years prior. He got out prematurely after assaulting 5 prison guards,
oh,
made his way from New York to Philadelphia the night before, assaulted 4 women on the streets of Philadelphia, proceeded to stay at a homeless shelter that evening. The next morning, made it to the outskirts of Philadelphia. Unfortunately, and you know, sexual sexually assaulted a woman that morning, got back in, back on the local transportation, changed his clothes at a local drop box, and then proceeded to get back on the bus and get off at a station where I had worked, a beautiful town in Pennsylvania, where I think the biggest, offense is usually running a red light during the day. That happens, and not knowing that June 16th of 2022 was going to be such a pivotal change in my life and
Oh my.
opened me wide and really opened that audacity with me and realized that I wasn't living the biggest, boldest, audacious life and that there was so much more that I was supposed to do with my life. And as hard as it was, and the trials and the tribulations and the physical punches, what we have to recognize is we've all had those punches in life. And maybe what yours wasn't physical, perhaps it was, but whatever it was, we've all had them. And we have to decide what we're going to do with them. And there's been so much good that's come out of it because of it. Um, and yes, it's been hard. After 3 years of trials, 11 different trials, finally getting a verdict 3 months ago, I can say that the chapter is close to being closed, but it never will be a finale. It will never be over. And it really is now my story to go and make good in the world.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Erica. Well, first of all, thank you for your bravery and your vulnerability in sharing that. I know
Mm.
you share your story in your new book that's coming out. I know you share your story on stages. You know, that is something, to your point, that you've taken this horrific moment. And that's not everybody's calling, right?
Nope.
There's a woman listening who maybe has been through something similar, or sexual abuse, or, any number of things, that says, I don't feel called to go share my story on stages and in a book, and
Yes.
that's okay too.
Yes.
Your purpose, that woman's purpose, that person's purpose may be something entirely different. But for you, you've taken this and really turned this into this notion of expansion.
Mm.
Yeah. At what point, because I imagine there was PTSD, there was trauma, there was physical healing, but so much psychological healing. What was the moment or the thing that you said, I I have to make this about doing something positive with this experience,
Mm.
because other women, other people, right? Gender
Yes.
agnostic, other
Yeah.
people need to know that they can come back from hard things. Because you also mentioned having, like, looking back on even your childhood. So it seems like
Mm.
there was this accumulation of reaching a point that said, there's a reason I'm supposed to share this, or I've experienced some of these things in life.
Yes. Oh, I love this question. And first and foremost, before I even answer it, I want to also honor, like you said, it's not that everyone needs to go and, take their punch and talk to the world about it. And
Yeah.
some people it's a quiet healing and there's something that you're doing behind the scenes that no one even sees. To me, it was speaking, and that was part of actually my healing and sharing my story and trying to be the light for someone else. And I knew if I could change just one person's life, it didn't have to be on a stage. It could be a private conversation. It could be a
Yeah.
post that I did. It could whatever. So I love that you honored that with every listener that's, who's been through something. And we all have. And if you haven't yet, unfortunately, at some point, life will punch you. Like life will get in the way and it will be challenging. But, you know, it's crazy when you ask me what that pivotal point is. And I actually talk about this in the book. Um, you know, like I said, those first like 72 hours were an utter blur. And I remember finally being able to come home from the hospital. And I remember being outside on our deck, and we have this gazebo, and I was sitting there with this massive hoodie sweatshirt on. I mean, the middle of June. And I just remember just the tears dripping down my face, wondering how I was going to get my life back together more mentally than anything, right? Like,
Sure.
how I was like, what? And I felt so much like so angry. I felt like
Oh,
like a real victim. Like, why did this happen to me? Why did God do this to me? Why am I in this position? And I kept like, and it was crazy. It was almost like someone tapped me on the shoulder and there was a lightning bolt, and I heard so distinctly the laughter of my kids in the pool. And in that moment, like, it was crazy. I was like, because of them.
Mm,
I Mom, I'm not gonna be this victim. I am not gonna stay in this mode. And I know it may not happen as quickly for everyone else when you make that decision, but for me, that's when that poignant decision happened. I said, I don't wanna just be a survivor either. I now wanna go and thrive and change so those giggles and those 4 eyes that look at me every day have a role model of saying, "Hey, listen, when we get punched, when the things happen, when the brick house falls down, when we're in financial trials or tribulations, like, we can get through anything hard." Right? But
mhm,
it comes with the mindset, and as I back up in my life, I realized that I had been building this muscle of resiliency for so many decades, right?
mhm.
Like, trauma with my family, trauma with, not being able I remember not being able to read in 1st grade. My mom was a developmental, like, reading teacher and not being able to read. I remember not having the date for the prom and feeling like I was the only girl that wasn't gonna go to the prom because, like, I didn't have a date. And these are little things, but, like, all these little things where you're building this muscle of resiliency, not getting
Mm,
that dream job that I thought I was gonna get, right? Feeling financial woes and, especially right after college, and just
right?
recognizing that we in life, we can decide on building that muscle, but it's really what we decide to do with it. But what I recognize is what I had done with all these other little things is I had just tried to, like I said before, push it away, forget about it, repress it. But with any trauma, no matter how big or how small, and no two traumas are the same. So let's not even try to compare them. We all have different traumas in life. What I recognize is it's like water. It's going to find its way out at some point, and if you don't deal with it, it's going to burn either within you or around you, and you
Yes.
need to find a way to eventually deal with it. And I think in life, sometimes that's really hard because we wanna show up big, bold, and audacious, and sometimes we recognize that showing that vulnerable side is really, really hard.
Yeah, it is really hard. It's been a journey for me. I've mentioned on this podcast and in other places that working in you're in a male-dominated field in the
Yeah.
construction industry. I worked in a lot of male-dominated industries, at least in the senior leadership ranks, and I really led with my head, right? If I could compete intellectually, then I felt like I was on equal footing, and so when I left corporate America and I started this work, I had somebody dear to me say, You have to tap into that other side of you that you have repressed for so long, because what connects people is vulnerability and authenticity and all the things. And you're right, it can be difficult. You mentioned something that I wanna point out for the person listening because I think it's I what you did is almost do a highlight reel, which is
Mm.
I've done hard things, and so what I often coach around is something that you just articulated in terms of you actualized is sometimes we're facing really tough stuff, and it feels so overwhelming, and what I often say is, "You've done hard things before." So take a
Mhm.
moment and think about all the different hard things that you've gotten throughout your life. That's your highlight reel, right? And
Yes.
how did you
Yes.
show up during those hard things? How did you survive and thrive with parents that were alcoholics? How did I get out of a very toxic relationship? By the way, not to my children's father. He is a wonderful man. Um, post, post, post that. Um,
Yes.
it's it's that highlight reel that I think can be so important and looking back and sort of giving yourself that I can do this.
Yes, yes, it's so crazy because I have, in my book, actually, I have something where I really challenge the reader to take a moment and take a pause in that chapter and to open their phone and in their notes, make an audacious badass list. And all of the
Mhm.
badass things that you've done, and whether they've been, hey, listen, I've run the marathon, or whether it's been, I've had, 3 babies, or whether it's been like, "Hey, listen, I went to the gym 5 days this week," like, big, small, like, just what are those audacious things? And take 2 minutes every day to
Yeah.
read it, to add to it, and to remind yourself, like, "Oh my goodness, now if I have been able to do all of that,
Yeah.
Today, it's gonna be a breeze to be able to do something, right? Like, so I
Yeah.
think so often we think about all the things, with so many thoughts running through our heads every day, right? 80,000 thoughts, 95% of them being repetitive, and I think 90% of them approximately being negative, right? We have this like bad, like I say, like listening to an old 80s song that you just don't want to hear anymore. It just keeps showing up,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
love 80s music, so don't
Me
get
too.
me wrong. There's a couple songs that I don't need to listen to again and again,
Oh, whatever.
right? And like,
No.
but what I'll say is that sometimes we just keep playing that same song over and over again instead of being looking back and saying, wow, there was like 10 of those like greatest hits. And those
Yes.
are my hits. And they're different
Yes.
from your hits and different from the woman or the man to the right or left of you. And how beautiful that is. But when you're so to me, that's been a great point. When I start getting into that self-doubt, when I start being like, oh my goodness, why is she further ahead? Why is he doing that? Why didn't I get the promotion? I go back to that list and I'm like, nope, I've done hard things.
Yeah, I love that. Just for the person listening, the audacious badass list. I think that is so fantastic. It almost reminds me of every time I introduce a guest, and you have an amazing podcast, so you'll relate to this. It's like the guest hears their own introduction and they're like, dang, you make me sound really good. And it's like, no, that's really you. Think about how would somebody else read your
Yes.
bio or read your introduction, um, because other people would say it and read it very differently than sometimes we allow ourselves with our, modesty and humility and all the things. Um, talk about talk about your framework. So it's from punch, pivot, expansion.
Yes.
Give
Yes.
and I want we'll tease this out. We want everyone to obviously get the book and come see you and join your summit. But for the person listening that says, "Gosh, I could use a framework right now."
Yes, I love that. So yeah, the I'll say like the three bookends is, hey, listen, we've all had something that's gonna set us back. Maybe it's a doubt that day, maybe it's like I said, the punch, maybe it's a bitter divorce, whatever it is, we've all had that punch in life. And like let's recognize it, let's call it out, and then let's decide, okay, listen, I get a decision. Just like I did that day, being like, do I want to stay as the victim? Do I
Yeah.
want to be the survivor or do I want to be the thriver? We get the decision to move forward. And that is the hardest decision. But once you decide to make that decision, then it's the hard work. That's where the
Mhm.
expansion starts. That's when I really have to say, okay, listen, what do I actually have to do? Because it's easy to say, I don't want to stay as the victim, but then it's actually doing the work. And I have a framework in my book called Bold. And I'll give you a sneak peek. We really break it down. There's 4 chapters actually on this. And B is believing in yourself. What are you doing every day to invest in yourself to before you give yourself to the world, right? What are you making sure that you're like investing in you? The O is our ongoing process, our and what do we need to omit in our life, right? So what are the things that we have to consistently do every day that are going to push us closer to that next thing you want to add on that audacious badass list? Like where are you carving out that time? And within that framework, I have a method called 3-3-30. And when you get the book, you'll find out exactly what that is. But basically, 36 minutes of your day that I truly believe can be life changing when you're ready to make that decision. The L goes on to the one that's so important and one that often we don't want to ask for, and that's leaning on others. That's
Mhm.
recognizing that we are not meant to do life alone. And who are those people that you or your board of directors that you can count on when you're having that bad day, when you're not, you're caught in that disbelief or you're just not where you're supposed to be. Who are those people that you can truly, truly lean on and surround yourself with? And do you have the right circle, right? Are you surrounding yourself with, because remember when we surround ourselves with high performers, we sit within 25 feet of them, we're instantly increasing our performance by
Right.
15% just by being in their vicinity, not even doing
Yeah.
any of the work yet. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good stat for me. I like that. And then the D and really coming full force and where I recognized and going back to my children is the D of developing others. What are you going to do to help others? Because I truly believe just like they say, when you can actually teach something to others, that's when you've mastered it. And
That's
when
right.
you're willing to develop and you're willing to leave that legacy and you're willing to say, hey, listen, because of this, I want to be there for you and to be that light. There's nothing. Yes, at first it can feel selfish because it feels so good to help other people. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, then you see your work actually changing another human's life. I mean, I don't think there's any price you can put on that. And I know with all the coaching you do, you
Yeah.
see those transformations happening with people and it's there's something regardless of the fee or anything that just it's beyond yourself when you're willing to be that developer of other people. And so much so that one of the things that was so important to me was actually changing the law in Pennsylvania be and someone said, "Well, it's not gonna change your case, Erica. Like your case is done." And I said, "But if it changes one other person's life," because in the state of Pennsylvania, when you are strangled by someone you don't know, it's a misdemeanor versus a felony. And a misdemeanor is 1 to 3 years in prison, and, it's an attempted murder if it's someone you know, which is a felony, which is up to 20 years. And I truly was like, but I don't want someone else to have to go through 11 trials. I don't want someone to have to go through over 300, 3 years of trials and tribulations and ups and downs and going to the courtrooms and all of this to try to fight for justice.
Right.
And because of that, we have law that will pass, because I'm confident of it, through legislation in the state of Pennsylvania, and it will be named the Erica's Law. I
Oh
did
my
not
gosh, Erica. I have goosebumps. That is amazing. Look at
to
the
be able to
change.
say if that is the one thing, and that person may never know who Erica is, but it's someday that that's going to change his or her life because we dare to do something, then I've left a legacy or a piece of me here that is far more important than myself and much bigger about serving others.
Yeah. Gosh, that not only brings goosebumps, but tears to my eyes. And I know that that's not the purpose of sharing it. I think that the inspiration from whatever it is, whatever the thing that you've been through, and finding that truth that allows you to show up more audaciously, to expand, to do something positive with that, believing in yourself, the ongoing work that you're going to do, the leaning and having others that you can rely on, and then using that as a force of good beyond you. It makes me think about, you have a gift and a talent for public speaking, for your thought leadership, for writing. I mean, that is, in my estimation, God-given DNA, amazing
Mhm.
gifts and talents. And as you know from my work, I believe every single human being has God-given gifts and talents. It's a matter of figuring out talent for what. So, I think for me, the message to myself and to the person listening is, we've all been through hard things. We've all had a punch. And to your point, if you haven't had a punch, significant punch at this point, there's probably one awaiting, right?
Mhm.
Hopefully it is not nearly what you went through. Um, but that idea of, what is your natural gift and talent, and how do you use that to be the way you carry forward, the way you expand audaciously, the way you develop others. Maybe it is helping to change the way a law is formed. Maybe it is speaking publicly. Maybe it's volunteering at the women's shelter, or adopting a child, or whatever that thing is. It's finding your unique path that gives you, I'm hearing it, that gives you a sense of purpose beyond the punch.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly where that pivot and where that expansion starts happening because, when you expand, you grow, right? And when you grow, you are helping other people, right? Like when you're willing to develop yourself to be able to leave greater good out there. And to
Yeah.
your point, it doesn't mean you need to change the law. It could be, there's other little things like the month of March. There's luckily no foundation that's women of random assault yet, but there is women of domestic assault. And so all
Right.
the proceeds from my book, the month of March, in honor of Women History Month, in honor of Women in Construction Week, all the proceeds from my book will go back to women of domestic abuse because it is a major issue. And to me, like, it's a small fraction of what I can do to help make a difference. And so I want everyone to think on this, that's listening to this right now, what is one little thing you can do? And it doesn't have to be moving mountains, right? It can be something really, really small. It could be, you were a cancer patient and you decide you're going to write that check and not wait till December because you could help someone's life today, right? And to your point, going into, a hospital and visiting children of cancer, that are cancer patients.
Right. It's finding your path. The some new thought leadership I've been working with is with intention. This whole notion of doing everything with intention, everything that matters with intention,
Yes.
right? We make hundreds of thousands of decisions a week, but what are those things that relationships require intention,
Mm.
careers require intention, um, our wellness requires intention. And it seems to beautifully link to this is how can you create intention, positive intention around this difficult time. Um,
I love,
eh,
can I interject there really just a
Please,
quick
oh,
moment? I
please.
love that you're saying that in the way you started that off by talking about the connection. So I have two keynotes, and one of mine is, the audacity of meaningful connections and being willing. No, right now we're being inundated, right, with AI, right? The way it's coming into the world and everything. You don't know if you can even. There's such a trust factor right now
Right.
going on amongst people. I truly believe that nothing, 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 nothing would have gotten me to where I am today, writing the book, doing the summit, being on a podcast with this like you, without human connection,
Mm,
without people. And truly people ask me like, what, how did you get through this? And I said, yes, the doctors and the nurses were great. Yes, the detectives. Yes, therapy. Yes, reading was awesome. But my oxygen was human connection. It was the fact that my husband, without, a question asked, jumped up back on that plane and was like by my side at my hospital bed. My sister jumped in the car from DC. My best friends drove down, you know, hours and hours to be by my side. My kids hugging me when I came home. It's that connection that saves us. And loneliness is such an epidemic,
yeah,
especially after COVID, where they say it's equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, what it can do detrimentally to your health,
yeah.
mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And we need to go back to the basics of human connection. And the more AI comes in, and I'm a big fan, believe me. I mean,
Oh,
ChatGPT, I mean, I don't know
well,
what I did without her.
yeah.
It's it's a her to me,
Oh, it's
though.
for her. Oh, yeah, good to know.
I need to give her a good name. But what I will say is that that will never ever replace, right? Just being with a friend, having a podcast like this, just the way I feel right now. They say walking with a friend for 12 minutes in a day can actually change the entire trajectory of your day. Just the walking and be physically being connected with someone.
Yeah. It's so interesting you say that too, because while this is virtual, and there is something magical about being in person, I will say these podcasts, these opportunities to get to know other amazing people, women and men, and get to know their story and their background and what they're doing. It lights me up. It fuels me for the day. The listener doesn't know by the time this airs that we carved out time on a Sunday today to do this. And my goodness, Erika got in at 3:30 in the morning, got up and went to her workout, which better than I, because that probably would have been the thing I would have skipped. Got to church and still had time to get on here with me and look amazing. That's what
But
we
you
do.
didn't tell them that I still have on my sports bra underneath my, my mock turtleneck, So like, I mean, But, like, we can still do it messy, and that's what I love
Right.
about women like you. You keep it so real, and I
Yeah.
wanna honor you and your authenticity that way. Because when I think about you, I'm like, yes, you're always polished and, like, you have, your books and, like, everything you're doing, but I'm like, she's so real, right? Like, and I wanna make sure that anyone listening to this is really remembering, like, at the core, that's what it's about. People wanna see that vulnerable
100%.
side and see that real side and be like, okay, she doesn't always have it together,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
because no one
Yeah.
does. We're hot mess expresses most
We
days.
are hot mess expresses. You don't wanna see my feet right now. I put lotion on them and put fuzzy socks on them because 'cause they're so dry from the winter. Yeah, we can
Amen.
amen. We all have our thing. What just a couple more questions. I wanna bring it into the workforce for just a minute, and
Yes.
then time is going by so quickly. Talk about because you speak with folks in lots of different capacities on stages with organizations, associations, etcetera. What could the person listening that is in leadership take from this? Where do they pull these themes and this incredible information, and show up maybe differently in their own leadership?
I love that. So I'm gonna go back to that bold method because I tie that into my other keynote that I talk about is really like tying back into leadership and deciding, hey, listen, how can we apply bold not only like to ourselves, but then how can we apply it to our organization, right?
Mm,
And
yeah,
going back to that and recognizing that, to be a bold leader, we have to be our authentic self because when we believe in ourselves and we show up authentic in the boardroom, at the meeting, to our employees, that's what people really want to see. That's why people stay with companies, right? Like,
right,
they say the number one reason people leave is because of their manager, because
right,
they just there's this trust factor or they don't really feel connected. And as leaders get more and more senior, I think they get um, one, they don't have as much time, and I think secondly, there's some trepidation, like, how real am I allowed to show up as we have to feel like we're so polished and things are
yeah,
together, right? But the leaders who are vulnerable, and I don't mean you have to share all your dirty laundry, those are the ones that are, like, attracting the right people. They feel they're working on that culture because they're willing to show up, and I
yeah,
truly believe with that, when you start showing up that way, you encourage other people to show up as their truest version. And when you do, you spark inspiration that could be muffled if you decide that the person has to live in this box or in their cube. When
yes,
you allow people to show up and be like, bring that idea to the meeting that they're like, oh, I don't know if that's a good idea, if that's going to go. That could be the idea that changed the trajectory of your entire like mission or your company or your quarter or whatever it is,
right,
but also building a level of psychological safety. So when people can only lean on you if they feel psychologically safe. And
that's right,
if employees and managers and superior like they don't feel psychologically safe in their realm, then we're never going to be able to really lean on people. We can say, oh, I can lean on her or I can lean on him, but if we don't feel psychologically safe with the environment that I'm in. So I think as leaders we have to build that psychological safety. We talk
yeah,
especially in the construction industry, right? Like the hard hat, the steel toe boots, the PPE, the rules, the regulations, but what about the psychological safety of saying, hey, listen, we say anyone can stop a job, right? But does that person who just started 3 weeks ago really feel comfortable to speak up,
that's
right?
right, that's
And then the
right,
D on the development side, really, what are you doing every day? I think sometimes we wait till once a year, like, what's the performance review look like? How am I going to develop this person? I'll send them to some training. But what are you doing every day to really develop your people?
yeah,
And I think you can tie that so much back to leadership. But so often that is like the last thing we're thinking about on a day to day basis about succession plan, about retention, about recruitment, right? But if we're developing a little bit every day, it goes back to the that ongoing progress. Like, how can you build that as part of your habit as a leader?
that's right,
So,
that's
yeah, just
right.
kind of really tying back to those 4 frameworks.
I love that. Yeah, I wish I had the gal's name off the top of my head. There was a post recently on LinkedIn where she talked about the CEO of the organization had created the backdrop, the virtual backdrop with the logo and everything on it of the company. And it was backwards. With the way it showed up on the screen
Yeah.
to others, it was backwards. And so at some point, she was on a call with them, and when the call was over, she pinged him and she said, "Hey, love the logo. It's really neat, but it reads backwards." And he said, "Do you know I have been on at least 8 calls today with multiple people, and not one person
Mm.
has shared that with me." And he wasn't a scary guy. He wasn't
Yep.
somebody that people were, and what it reminded me of is there's power of position. Whether you believe, and I learned this early in my career as a senior leader, I thought, right? I show up authentically, I'm warm, I'm kind, I have I have this image of myself. And so
Yes.
why would be anyone ever be intimidated or uncomfortable, speaking their truth? And what you have to realize is there's still power of position, and you have to be
Yes.
deliberate and, getting back, intentional to my word, about, hey, regardless of my title, your title, etc., I want everybody's thoughts and feedback. This is a safe
Yes.
space. And then of course behave in a way that supports that. But it's just another nuance, because I think sometimes we think we're creating psychological safety by our behavior alone. There are times you have to be very overt about
Yes.
what you mean by that, because people will just assume that because of your title or your status, really the rules are different. So I love you
Yes.
bringing that forward.
And one of the things I do in my keynote, and it was actually one of my first interviews ever after college, right before it was the fourth interview, being like, "Oh, I hope I land this dream job." And I remember the executive VP taking this piece of paper out of his desk. He goes, "I have one more question for you," thinking, "Oh, this is the make or break." And he said, "What's one word that describes you outside of your title or your degree or your this or your that?" And the word I blurted out was effervescent, and like an Alka-Seltzer tablet. Like, I basically just told him I was a digestive tool. And he goes, "I've never had anyone say this to me." I mean, he had hundreds of words on this paper. And I said, he goes, "Do you know how to spell it?" I said, "No, I wasn't." That's why I was in math and science. But to this day, I still use that word, and I do that in one of my keynotes where we all then wear name tags without our title, without our full name, about something that people see in you that you wanna
Yeah,
be remembered by. Because people will forget your name, they'll forget your title, they'll
sure.
forget the company you work for, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So
That's
think
right.
about what would be that word that you'd put on yourself. And I always say, I have a lot of energy, I like to do a lot of different things, I have a lot of balls up in the air, just like all the bubbles in that Alka-Seltzer tablet. And
Yeah.
I feel like that word is still true to me, that if people were like,
Yes.
"Yeah, you kinda are like an Alka-Seltzer tablet," like, maybe not the digestive tool, but, like, I get the analogy. And, so I want you everyone, like, that's listening to this to just think, like, what is your word? Like, how do you wanna be remembered?
Yes. Yeah, that is such a good exercise and cracks me up. That would not have been audacious, would have been the word, because that's how I know you.
Right, right, right.
Right?
Now
I
this
mean,
was back
you
when I was 22, and
right. It was pre-audacious. But you're still effervescent for sure. And this may tie into many things you've already said, but just to sort of put a big bow on this, I love to end each show with the guests giving wisdom advice to the listener. What is one thing you would invite them to start doing, stop doing, and continue doing?
oh my goodness. Ugh, this list could be long, because this list is like something that I'm working on myself every single day. And I'll go back, to um it was start first.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna give you go back to that 3-3-30. We
Yes.
talked about it before. I teased you a little bit with it, and it's really, really simple, but simple sometimes can be hard until we make it a habit, right? Like, think about your child, like when they were first starting to brush their teeth, like they would forget to do it, right? Like,
Right.
it was a simple habit, like 2 minutes, like brush your teeth. Like, why can't you do it? But we as adults even have trouble making habits. And that is 3 minutes a day just devoted to you. When you first get up in the morning, no phone, no doom scrolling, just be intentional with what you want that day to be. Then three, really pen to paper. Or, if you're like super, electronic, like in your notes, three things you are truly, truly grateful for, because you will attract more things that day if you start your day with that foundation. But be as specific as possible. Not like, "I'm
Mhm.
grateful for food on my table. I'm grateful for my kids." You can write that, but something specific that happened. "I'm grateful that I read my child this story last night." Or, the more specific you can get, the more you're going to see the specifics and the little things in your day that you're grateful for. And then 30 minutes to work on that one audacious goal. 30
Mm,
minutes, it might be 2 15-minute sections. Maybe you get up 15 minutes early, you go to bed 15 minutes late, but we all have those goals. Time's gonna pass us by regardless of where we're at, but how are you being intentional to work on them every day? That could be a big goal, a small goal, something like that could be 30 minutes of exercise a day. That could be 30 minutes of watching one of your favorite TV programs with your significant other. Like, don't think that, oh, it has to be that I'm writing a book or doing a podcast. Like, it could be little things that lead to
yeah.
those better habits. So that's number one of start.
Start. Stop.
Something that I would oh, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, what should they stop doing?
So I would stop overanalyzing, I think sometimes we allow that, the four-letter F word to get in the way, and
Yeah.
we all say, "Listen, I'm never gonna get the engine started," and they always say, right, shutting the engine off and turning it back on, that's the takes the most amount of energy. Keep it idling, keep moving forward, fail forward with that, and I think that that actually will get you to that next level, even if it's messy.
Love it, and continue.
Okay, so continue. I have also a chapter in the book that says, ditch. It's actually chapter 8, and it's uh, ditch busy, choose abundance, right?
Yeah.
So stops using the word saying I'm busy and think about the abundance, right? Like I get to do the laundry. I get to actually unload my dishwasher where some people don't even have a dishwasher. Well, whatever that is that day is continue to start to look for in an abundance mindset and stop being in a scarcity mindset. Like, oh, I can't do that because there's already 300 podcasts out there that are competing with me. Like,
Right.
yes, you can. If you want it bad enough, you can make it work.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Erica, you have so much to offer, and you are such a gift.
Mhm.
I'm so privileged to be in your circle and in your sphere. For the people listening, I reached out to Eric at one point just to connect through LinkedIn, and then we got reintroduced through a mutual marketing firm. And you have been so generous with your time and
Mm.
your thought leadership and your advice and wisdom. And we're going to be doing something during International Women's History Month together with a couple other incredible women. Gets back to this notion of abundance mentality. So many women live in this mindset of scarcity. There's not, there's I have to fight and compete and scratch and claw for what I
Mhm.
want because there's so little. You are the epitome of a woman who recognizes that there's so much abundance. We can
Mhm.
shine a light for one another. We can lift each other up. And you've taken a really traumatic, difficult experience. Um, and used it in such a way that is not only changing laws and making things better for people that will come behind, but day to day that you're giving
Mm.
somebody the people listening and the people that have the opportunity to see you on stage just such a gift. Pick up Erica's book, Audacious Expansion. It's available wherever you buy great books. She's showing it on the screen. I have pre-ordered mine, but of course I have to wait till Monday, so I don't have it yet. So do that. Be sure to follow her on all the socials. It's all in the show notes because you're going to want her to come to your organization or your association and speak. She will lighten up the room and leave you tools and things you can truly actualize. And that I think is one of the best things a keynote speaker can do is not just motivate and inspire, but leave you with tools and techniques and frameworks that can truly be life changing. So, with all of that, thank you again for all of you that joined and the privilege of spending your time with us. Thank you. Until next time, you've got this.
Congratulations on choosing to invest in yourself. I know your time is precious. Thank you for spending it here with me. I believe in helping you look up, step forward, and fully realizing your potential. If today's conversation resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd rate and comment on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you know someone who would benefit, please share this episode with them. Let's stay connected. Visit me at dr-cynthia.com, and you can find me on all the socials at Dr. Cynthia Bentzen-Mercer. Until next time, remember, boldly start working on your future today.